Hi, I'm Marisol Romany, Dallas College Chief Social Responsibility and Inclusion Officer. There are three areas under the Social Responsibility and Inclusion umbrella: diversity, equity, and inclusion, supplier diversity, and sustainability. All three areas are interrelated and work closely together. This conference and next week's Track Summit were produced by the sustainability team and many highly esteemed coworkers and volunteers throughout Dallas College. At Dallas College, we teach our students and employees that sustainable solutions are good for people, the planet, and our prosperity. Another way to say it is that sustainable solutions are good for equity, the environment, and the economy. We encourage our students and employees to always seek sustainable solutions in their personal, professional, and community lives. Today's conference focuses on United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. We hope you enjoy your time with us. But before I introduce our keynote speaker, let me share a few housekeeping items. Closed captioning is available in all sessions. To show captions, click Show Closed Captions in the lower left of the screen. If you have a question for a speaker, put it in the Q&A section. If there is time for questions at the end of the presentation, the host or moderator will choose questions from the Q&A box. Use the chat box to make general comments about what you're hearing. Don't forget to visit our exhibitors during the lunch break. Their links are available on the same website that you are using to access the sessions: www.dallascollege.edu/sustainability summit. Remember, today's live presentations and the on-demand presentations will be available for you to view through May 31st, 2022. And you can view them at www.dallascollege.edu/sustainability summit. Many thanks to our generous sponsors who have enabled us to bring you this conference at no charge: Sage Glass, JEXA Energy, and Kimberly Clark. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Courtney Macavinata. Courtney is co-founder and CEO of the Respect Institute, whose mission is to give youth and their influencers tools to build self-respect so they can end cycles of disrespect and thrive. Courtney is a domestic violence survivor whose multiracial family struggle for respect amid issues like substance abuse, incarceration, high school dropout, and teen pregnancy. As an adult, her mission became to create a world where respect for all is the status quo. A nationally recognized youth development expert, Courtney is co-author of the best-selling book, Respect, and she led the creation of groundbreaking self-respect building tools such as the Respect Basics, used by more than 20,000 youth and their influencers in schools, jails, and intervention programs around the globe for the past decade. Courtney has a BA in journalism from San Francisco State University. A native of San Jose, she lives there with her husband, Jeremy, and son, True. Ms. Macavinata, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. I'm so excited to see you. I just want to make sure that you can all hear and see me, so I know Faye will let me know. All right, thanks, Casey. I'm going to share my screen now, which I hope you'll find a bit helpful. Let's do that. And okay, hold on. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I'm just sharing the keynote. There we go. All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint as well? Okay, perfect. Okay, sorry. If we were in a crowd together, I could like wave to you and say hello, but this is a little bit different. As we all know, we've all been in video Zoom land for however long now, but I'm really, really excited to see you all today. I have a special place in my heart for college systems like yours, being someone who also benefited from going to a college, you know, in my home state and a public college, including community college. So I'm really excited to be here with you today discussing all of these issues that are so paramount, including I loved hearing the UN framing of why we're here today. I thought I could start with a sharing with you about someone that is very near and dear to my heart. Her name is Kimberly Barney, and she was a middle school teacher in Georgia. Just a superstar, you know, what we would call a human helper, a human giver. She had a beautiful family. She taught her little tail off all of her years, being super innovative. She was a partner of the Respect Institute, you know, reviewing our curriculum and helping us come up with neat programs like a self-care fund for not only K through 12, but college teachers. And why I'm bringing her up right now is I know a lot of us went through and are still going through a tremendous amount of loss during the pandemic, not only loss of life, but loss of opportunity, loss of certainty, loss of time. Just the grief, I think, is huge, and the shared trauma is huge. And Kimberly is someone that I lost during the pandemic. She had a form of cancer prior to the pandemic, and then very quickly succumbed, you know, from a combination of all these health issues, and passed away during the pandemic. And she was only 41. And why I bring her up is because, not to start on a downer, but to celebrate that not only did she work on her resiliency constantly during her teaching career, which is kind of a must. Not that she didn't look forward to summer break, but, you know, and she also, on the other hand, by her own admission, you know, just could not stop giving. You know, the demands on her, and there were also demands, were just so great. And when she got sick, we were talking about how we think, you know, that the combined stress and trauma and everything she experienced in her life, you know, made her immune system not helpful during this time. And not to say that like stress killed her, but, you know, by her own sharing, you know, stress certainly did not help. And I was thinking about y'all, especially the faculty and staff that are on today, not only the students who I know you're working so hard, you're probably working, studying, caring for people, doing all of the things too. I was thinking about how, you know, we shouldn't just jump right into this topic of respect without acknowledging, you know, all that you have carried, shown up for, kept going around over the past, you know, 20 months. And you were already on a path of redesigning your college prior to that. So you had this big demand sitting on your shoulders in the middle of an unprecedented time. So I just really wanted to say thank you for whatever you have been doing to survive. I know our goal is to thrive, but I think a lot of us are just happy surviving right now. And thank you for showing up for our youth, for your peers in your classrooms, you know, every day. Just those little interactions, you might have been giving someone hope to keep going, because this has just been a very rough time. So I hope you'll keep Kimberly in your heart as somebody that, you know, really, like a lot of you, devoted herself to others, and also, like a lot of you, need to have investments in her too. We need to take care of y'all as well, okay? So along those lines, I thought maybe you could share in the chat, if you're willing, what you appreciate about this community of people here today, and in general. So your whole Dallas College community, like in the past 20 months, it's about 20 months we've been going in the official pandemic. What do you appreciate about what you've seen in people and their resiliency or their strength and their contributions? So I would love to see that. Any offerings in the chat? I hope y'all can use the chat. So Georgianne says, the hard work and dedication of my team has done through the past year and a half. Carrie says, consistent care for our students. Lori shares extending grace. Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit, is how much did we have left over to extend? Because it's been, being able to do that with each other is kind of a miracle during this time. I really appreciate y'all contributing. That's exactly the kind of thing that we're going to go over today. I'm going to skip the poll. Unless, Lori, sorry, I sent it to you a little late. You have it ready. If not, that's totally fine. I sort of got out of sequence. We could also just put it in the chat if you want to respond, which is, what diminishes our capacity to respect others? So you shared these examples of where you saw folks do it. Oh, there's the poll right there in the chat. Thanks, Lori. That's nice, Stanley. Outreach has been really important during this time, whatever that looked like. We even were doing some text-based outreach in our programs. Yeah, that's great. So Lori, I don't know if we can show the poll, or if not, we can come back to it later. We can reference it later and I'll just keep going. But a lot of things can diminish our capacity to respect others. It could be, the old adage, you could be too hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It can be that you are at the end of your gas tank, nothing left to give. It could be, deeper things, that you are experiencing disrespect or, an entire dismissal of your experience of life, of what you're going through, depending on the different affinity groups that you align with or are a part of. And I think we don't pay enough attention to what is really our capacity to respect others, even if we really believe that that is, the golden rule for us. I wanted to share a little bit about how I sort of became so interested in this topic. One of the things that started it was, my early upbringing, which you heard a little bit about in the introduction. And, when I was growing up, my parents, who you can see by the picture, are a multiracial couple. I saw a lot of, frankly, violence, between them and other people in our community, but also saw the different ways that they were treated, whether it was, my mom, because she was a woman and, who had been a teen mom and didn't have a lot of education, or whether it was my dad because he was a man of color. And, just like we're exploring now in society again, he had a lot of interactions with law enforcement. I heard him called names, and, and we were living in a pretty kind of, you might call it a hippie kind of progressive part of California, and this stuff was still going on. So I saw a lot of this growing up, and I became really curious about, well, I love these people, so I don't think they're just bad people. They do some, questionable things, but I think there's something else going on here. Like, why on even a good days are people so nasty to each other? Why over here, when we're having a good, loving run as a family, like what's going on there? So one of the things I wanted to acknowledge is I'll be talking a lot today about where we have some sense of control and power in our situations, while acknowledging that there are huge institutional structures that cause, rampant what we would define as disrespect and harm to lots of folks. So, it's not to say that we're not existing inside of structures that are not conducive to generating respect among people. And you could even say maybe even the electoral system we're all existing in does that. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we're kind of talking about ourselves as individuals and where we might have some nexus of control. My parents, grew up in farming communities. They both grew up in the California kind of rural areas, and they both did not complete high school or college. And, like I said about my mom, she was a teen mom. They did, however, were amazing examples on the other end of resiliency and survival. They were very hard workers. They worked on themselves. This is like before Oprah and all these magazines told you how to do that, and they did do a lot of healing and recovering, which I'm really grateful for. For our family, our sibling group, I'm the youngest, I've also seen that various outcomes of what we experienced and where we felt control. So, both of my brothers, similar to my dad, went to prison at very young ages, and my sister also had a lot of mental health issues. It's just really interesting how these cycles can go on inside of our household and inside of our communities. But what I discovered was there were some differences or some levers that we could activate as individuals, even if the environment around us was extremely chaotic. And even, like I said, you're inside of very diminishing, harmful structures. So what I came to kind of study is like what made the difference for me as one of the individuals in this group called the family. So even though I'm younger, I think that was part of it. My family, my parents had kind of better successes by the time I was, in middle school or something like that. Also, what made the difference was some innate resiliency, which you kind of can't plan for, and that's kind of the luck of the draw. But also, when I took inventory of it and then matched it to research, there was a set of things going on behind the scenes that we now call it the Respect Institute, the Respect Basics. And so these are just practices. And though these were developed for, younger people, younger than all of you, kiddos in middle school and high school, the truth is we primarily use them with our work with adults. So these are practices. They're in a circle because they're not linear. You don't do them one at a time. And even though they kind of sound cute and like a magazine article or something, there really is a lot of, there's science and behavior behind each of the respect basics. And I have really had to call on them during the pandemic. For me, especially the get help, I think a lot of us have needed more support during this time, and even having the energy to get it and ask for it has been really hard. Also, the concept of setting boundaries. I think a lot of you, I make up, especially if you work here, that maybe even though you were in a pandemic, you still had to keep moving forward with your work. And, no amount of employee benefits, can really make up for the fact of what we all had to just keep going. And that was a lot. And so being able to set boundaries, I think for folks became even harder, because if you were suddenly like working remotely, for example, while trying to redesign a bunch of stuff and stay open for your students, you maybe also could have reached out and touched your bed, from where you were working. And so I think being able to have boundaries and turn off our brains has become a huge challenge also during this time. So these are the respect basics, and we will be sending you a link later to any of these tools that you'll hear about today that you could grab onto and use either in your day work, in your future work, if you're a student, and just most importantly in your own lives. So if you're willing to share, sorry, I have a lot of sharing because I'm used to doing this a little bit more in person together. If you could share in the chat, respect is this big word and we all have our definitions of it. I mean, my grandma, who was 103 when she passed away earlier this year, not from COVID, just from, she was ready to go, I think. She 103. I mean, she's seen a lot of different things, and she was a woman, her family was originally from Mexico. She was born here, but, her definition of respect, which I would never argue with my grandma, was very different, than mine. And that's okay. I mean, her definition of respect was, hey, I'm the eldest, the buck stops at me. Now, I would never disagree with that. But, we all have different definitions of this. And I think we throw this word around and we don't necessarily know what we're talking about. Sometimes we may mean that we just like someone, or we prefer them, or we trust them. And, that's different from the definition we're going to talk about today. So for you, if you want to share in the chat, what does respect look like or feel like or sound like to you when you hear that word? And nobody gets to be wrong. Any perspective that you have or experience you have is right for you. So I'd love to see you pop a few little items in there if you have time. So Brandon shares, to me, respect can be as simple as a smile, to let someone know you're acknowledging them. And I think that's exactly right. I think with masks and with Zoom, we have lost a lot of the ability to just show people, hey, I'm friendly, I'm safe, with a smile. And that really means something. That's not just like a cheesy Mr. Rogers thing. Listening and sharing openly. Sylvia says boundaries. Yes, definitely. Kathy Evans says listening. And that is really, in all of our surveys and work, the number one way that people say they feel that others respect them, like they feel it, is when people listen to me. It is that, feeling really listened to and gotten. When people consider your words rather than waiting for their chance to speak. Yep, here we go with listening again. Active listening and responding in a way that shows you care. Aretha Franklin song, seriously. Yes, Nikia, that is my theme song for obvious reasons. Feels like standing on the same ground. I really love that, Gabriel. What I make up about that is that we could be having different values, beliefs even, but if I make up that standing on the same ground means we're still acknowledging each other's humanity, and that like we both have a right to be here. And that we both think the other person matters, which is what we'll talk about a lot. And respect is honoring others for who they are and not expecting them to think, act like us, from Georgianne. That is really the bottom line. Our definition of respect is that, oh, sorry, I jumped ahead of my slides, is really looking at the root meaning of the word respect, which is really fun. If we have any word nerds or English literature friends on the line today, respect, the root really means like rewind. So for those of you who were born after we had tapes and cassettes and things that actually rewind, it literally means like rewind, And then spec means like, which I'm normally wearing glasses, like spectacle, right? It comes from from spectacle. So respect at its root means to look again. And so if you think about it that way, that doesn't mean be nice. It doesn't mean be polite. It doesn't mean I'm older or more powerful than you, and so I deserve more fill in the blank respect, right? It is based in the seeing humanity and in equity. And that was such a fascinating discovery for us when we looked at what is the root meaning of this word, because we apply a lot of things to it in our daily lives or in our cultures. And so how do we make this our culture? This is sort of, when you think about issues like sustainability and how we're going to move forward together through, probably continuing crisis in our society, whatever, pick your crisis. one of the ways we can do it is to kind of look at the research. And I wanted to share that with you to see if any of this resonates. So we'll kind of click through some of our research on how do we actually do this? What does this mean? And then we'll look at some tools that we could use. So respect, like we were alluding to, and you all already get it, you put it in the chat, is it's defined differently than esteem or self-esteem, trust, admiration, protocol, and civility. So I give this example, not to humble brag, but like I had the opportunity to meet President Obama. And so when you meet a president of this United States, you know, you wouldn't just go up to them and be like, hey, Obama, what's going on? I mean, I don't think he would mind that at all. He's super natural. But there's a protocol, right? If I were to do that, the Secret Service might tackle me. So that's different than respect. That's protocol. You know, you always say, Mr. President, even his wife calls him Mr. President, and when they're in formal settings. So that's like, you know, protocol or civility. I also think a lot of times people say, you know, oh, I really respect them. And I think they might just mean they like them or they admire them or they aspire to be like them. But I wonder if really put to the test, if we mean that, you know, that would be different than someone else's humanity having the same value. I don't think we would normally mean that. And then trust is really, I think it's mixed up with the word respect. I think trust is way more, you know, fluid and malleable than respect. Trust is can be a part of how people show respect. But trust is, you know, hey, I feel safe with you. I feel that you care about me. You know, keep my confidences, like the traditional trust. But I do think sometimes when we're saying, oh, I no longer respect them or I don't respect them anymore, I think we often mean I don't trust them anymore or I don't prefer them. I don't like them. Hey, we don't have to like everybody, but we can still uphold their humanity as equal to ours, right? One of the things I thought would be really interesting to share with you, especially those of you who currently work with students or who, if you're students who what you're training for, what you want to do is to work with other folks. This has really helped me not only in kind of direct service with young people and students, but just in work relationship and leadership effectiveness, which is that self-esteem and self-respect are really, really different concepts in the research. And our research was done, you know, by a visiting professor who is an expert on this. Her name's Dr. Nancy Nimeen. She's, you know, from the East Coast. She has taught at Yale and other places, and she teaches teachers, including college professors. But she helped us really unpack the difference between self-esteem and self-respect. And self-esteem, you know, we all have maybe have this thing called self-esteem, but what's tough about it is it's mostly actually outside of our control. Like the actual, if self-esteem were a literal, you know, bucket that you were trying to fill, you would never have the actual water yourself to put into it. The research shows it's our opinion of ourselves, for example, or maybe even our, you know, how we hold our value of ourselves, but it's all based on external inputs. So that could be media, that could be the education system as you're coming up. You know, your family is obviously going to be a big inputter into the bucket, peers, historical treatments and rights of your group. You know, like I look at someone like my dad, and when his whole life, society and even the law was saying you're not equal, that's going to impact his self-esteem, his opinion of himself. So that's all true. It's not saying self-esteem is not real. What we like to propose is that, first of all, we don't use self-esteem and self-respect synonymously, but that's kind of the semantics part, that we also as individuals don't invest in building our house on self-esteem. So if my opinion of myself is sort of the foundation of my life, we're saying maybe pause putting energy into that and instead focus on self-respect, which is more inside of our control. So our research shows that self-respect, though it can be nurtured in relationship or nurtured in a society or community, what's great about it is it really can be generated and nurtured from within. So for example, like I've worked a lot inside of juvenile justice and adult justice systems as part of my work with the Respect Institute, and also as part of my, passion that based on my family story, which you've heard, I really believe in especially juvenile justice reform and have worked on that as a juvenile justice commissioner and other roles. And why I say this is you can be working with someone who's incarcerated and they could have low self-esteem, right? Which makes total sense because of the inputs that have been put in. Remember those external inputs. Plus, I'm sitting in jail right now, regardless of the charges and all that. Like I'm literally locked up. I'm not being valued. I'm not participating, right? And have some healthy self-respect. Like, you know what? I still matter. I'm still here. There still could be something here for me to contribute. And that's what I really love about shifting where we invest and where what we think about, not our opinion of ourselves. Because God, most of us don't have a great opinion of ourselves. I mean, people who are really hardworking, who are really givers, you're often very hard on yourself, very self-critical. If we come from trauma, we're going to have all kinds of nasty little dialogues in our head. And that could be impacting our self-esteem. And, the idea that, well, low opinion of myself means, now low energy, low output, low value of myself. Whereas if we invest in our self-respect bucket, if you will, what's great is this nurturing is my actions today, despite my circumstances. My daily practices that show that I think I matter. And this doesn't have to be extravagant things. This is like, I brushed my teeth, I drank my water, I showed up where I needed to be. I treat you like you matter. That's one of the biggest outputs. Folks that nurture their self-respect, or even if you're not doing it intentionally, even if just we were able to if we could hook you up to something and show that your self-respect was being nurtured, one of the outputs would be big differentiation between people who have high self-esteem and people who have nurtured self-respect. People with high self-esteem, you've seen it. They can be bullies. They can be awful. They cannot listen, right? They can have a lot of antisocial behaviors. Because if my opinion of myself is really high, that could benefit you or not, the people around me, right? A lot of the bullying research shows that people who bully, and I don't believe kind of like that there are bullies. I think there are people who bully as a tactic. So people who bully have often test off the charts on Rosenberg for self-esteem. They have a very high opinion of themselves. And in fact, bullying might be a tactic they're using to maintain that. Does that make sense? So we don't really need a lot of high self-esteem to create a sustainable world. We need folks who know, this is the key thing with self-respect, who just know I'm a unique contributor to the greater whole, and no more or no less than the next person. We're all unique contributors to the greater whole. And where life starts to feel a little bit more manageable is when we kind of know what the unique contribution is and we're doing it. We don't have to do, and this doesn't mean even about our job. It's about like our way of being. Like, who are you in your ecosystem of your life? Like for me, I'm known for being like a gift giver. And this isn't about like, being fancy or impressing people or whatever. I love making little things and giving people things and showing them little tokens of appreciation. It's also part of my stress management plan, which we'll talk about. And I really hope the people in my life and like the people that work for me know I'm not doing that to get anything back. I don't ever do it on the right occasion. I don't know people's birthdays and stuff like that, but I'm just, one of the ways that I uniquely contribute is just wanting to send a little delight someone's way, a little beauty someone's way, or just to show them that I'm thinking about them and caring about them. And that is a way that I uniquely contribute. What is my opinion about myself about that? I don't care. I mean, does it mean I'm a nice person? Maybe, but I don't really care about that. That's just my unique contribution into the spaces that I share. Does that make sense? So I'm curious for you to put into the chat what do you think about this difference between self-esteem and self-respect, and why it might be a good idea, or not, you can disagree, to put more investment in nurturing ourselves and our belief that, you know, I'm a unique contributor to the greater whole. I have something to do here. I have a way to help here. Even if I'm in the worst circumstances, which y'all have been in and we have been in everywhere, I still have something to give. I still matter, even if I'm not doing great, and even if I'm not a superstar right now. While you're thinking about if you like this difference or not, or if this distinction is helpful to you, self-respect is still a tiny bit tricky. We do see in the research that relationships matter around our ability to nurture our self-respect, our ability to know that we're a unique contributor to the greater whole. It's like a lot of the ideas you put in the chat about how do we kind of, what does respect look like, feel like, sound like? Well, there's a component of it of like, you do have to be seen and acknowledged. You do have to know like, hey, I exist. And because the relationship is with the greater whole. I'm not trying to sound like a weirdo from California, but I hope this kind of connects, you know, that self-respect, it's actually not a product of isolation nor dependence. It's fostered and grown from interaction and support. I think it basically just shows up as, you know, you get those little tiny feedbacks that, yes, you are a unique contributor to the greater whole. You matter. So I think what's been really powerful about the words Black Lives Matter is, and this phraseology, you know, came out after we had published this research like many years ago. But what I loved about it is what that's saying is, so the mattering and the reflection of mattering has not happened. It's not happening, and it has not happened. And all the output shows that. All the disparity in health outcomes, all the disparity in the incarceration rates, all the disparity economically. We know where this started on this soil. And I say this as someone who comes from what's known as a native Mexican family. Part of our family lived in what's now called Arizona before that changed over, right? So like, we've been on this soil a long time and not had the group experience of mattering in equal measure to others. And that's when things really go toxic, violent, and harmful, right? So I think what's important about that is mattering. People that have more nurtured self-respect, you'll just notice they treat other people like they matter and like they are not less than them. And that is, not to bring up my little friend, we're not friends, President Obama. But one of the things I experienced when I was thinking about those interactions was, yes, there's the protocol and the formality, and this person definitely has more power, more accountability, more fans, you know, more money, more brains than me. But I know that that person does not think they are worth more than me on the human math scale. Does that make sense? So I think this is the difference. I mean, just sort of notice, we don't need to like hate on people who have high self-esteem. If you have high self-esteem, good for you, you know, but I think just notice that people that have high opinion of themselves, and that's kind of where they're leading from, where does that show up in their treatment of others? And let's not mistake that for confidence. Confidence is great, and we should all have confidence, you know, but it's that treatment of others and the output. Thanks, Faye, for the warning. Perfect. We'll be sending you these materials, these definitions. So again, just to recap, respect means to look again. Self-respect is defined as knowing you're a unique contributor to the greater whole, and people with self-respect, you know, just demonstrable self-respect, behave like I matter and you matter too, equally. And this is in the behavior. The last thing I wanted to share with you, I'm going to pump through this really quick, is the kind of relationship between resiliency and respecting others. Okay. What we know is that resiliency in general, the whole world of resiliency, and resiliency is kind of getting criticized right now. And I think it's just because some of the research doesn't take into account how systems or employees or employers, support, you know, resiliency or not, that it's not just an individual process. But we do know that fostering resiliency is a process and not a program. And there's a lot of ways to do that in a shared community like what you have at Dallas College. The way through is to amplify for everyone. And sometimes this is just talked about in relationship with kids, but this is really important in relationship to everybody, which is amplifying all of our protective factors. And this is really from having caring relationships. And this here says youth and their influencers, but this is you and your peers at work. This is you and your fellow students. And this is you, in relationship to your students, if you're a teacher and faculty here. And that these relationships have these qualities of compassion, understanding, respect, and interest, like I'm demonstrating respect towards you and interest. This is all the things you put in the chat. These relationships are grounded in listening, and they establish safety and basic trust. Also, folks who are more resilient, this research from Harvard was really helpful to us. They have 3 things in common as well. They have support circles, and those support circles are not just your friends or the people you go over and have dinner with. This is about your very topic-based, context-based support circles. So like you have a new baby and you have other parents of new babies are like your support circle, and that could even be a formal setting. Or like people who are in recovery, you might have like a 12-step group that you go to. You might have a professional learning community at your school or a peer group. So you want to have support circles for different topics, so that that's what the research showed, is like folks that had the different kinds of support circles and that were, based on life and ages and stages and evolved. Also, here we go again with the mattering. People that thrive and have more resiliency know their behavior matters. Now, this is not taking into account maybe when we have like mental illness or other things going on, but just in general, that hey, my behavior matters. My behavior is important here. The best example I can give you of the opposite of that is my dad told me this story when he got out of prison. He went to prison when he was 19. He got out when he was about 25. And he was in a very notorious prison here in California called San Quentin. And when he got out, he was driving over this bridge going from Marin, this area called Marin, to an area called Oakland, which you might know of. And he thought the words in his head, F it, the F word, F it. This is like the opposite of my behavior matters. This is like, I don't matter. My behavior doesn't matter. So what's next? Some trouble's going to start. And I think, so it's really important that we kind of know, hey, my behavior matters. That's something going on here. And then also that we manage stress and energy well. And this is a whole field and a whole nother topic. But what I like about this is it's not just talking about stress, it's talking about energy. And that's for those of you who brought up boundaries, that's where this comes in. What am I going to give energy to? What am I not going to give energy to? So those of us who are building or having a higher level of resiliency, we pay attention to not only the stressors, but where we're putting our energy and wherever we have choice. And we don't always, like I didn't have a choice that my kid was home from school for a year while I was also working, right? But how I manage that, so I chose to say, I'm not a homeschooler. I'm not a great teacher. I'm going to have to, this is going to be a mediocre school year for him, maybe, I can't keep it up at the level that he would get at school. So I had to manage my energy around that because I had to work and help keep a roof over our head. So I know we're getting to time. I did want to go back to kind of where we started, is thinking about my friend Kimberly and thinking about what you all have been holding and doing, especially like reorganizing your college during a pandemic as one thing. The sort of difference between stressors and stress, which has been really mind-blowing for me to learn about this more recently. There's this great resource called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, which I highly recommend. And Brene Brown has a great podcast on it, which we'll send in your follow-up materials. But you might recognize some of this. So, what stress looks like is emotional exhaustion, stress that's gone to burnout, sorry. Looks like emotional exhaustion, fatigue from caring too much for too long. Sound familiar? Depersonalization. This is when we can literally have no gas in our tank to extend respect or grace to others. This can happen. And that's when we see that depletion of empathy, caring, compassion, and even people who are like spiritual leaders go through this, because burnout is burnout. And a this decreased sense of accomplishment. Like when you have those little moments of like, everything I'm doing just seems like it doesn't matter. Everything feels futile. So that's like what burnout can look like. And what was interesting to me was the stress itself. Part of how we can build our resiliency together is we have to complete what these researchers call the stress cycle. So we have to go all the way through the tunnel. Usually it's like an emotion. We have to feel it all the way. We have to get it out of our body. And they give a lot of tips I'll pass on. What's interesting is, I don't know if you've done this, but like I used to always focus on the stressors. So like, is it work? Is it my bills? Is it my kiddo acting up? Is it, the president? Is it climate? Like trying to manage and change the stressors. When what this research shows is those might always be there and keep coming, the waves keep coming in closer sets. But where the burnout prevention happens is actually addressing getting through the stress cycle. So I think that that's really powerful, because I think you all can't just wake up in the morning. You can't just say mantras like, I'm going to respect everyone today and help create a better world. Like it's not a mind over matter thing, if that makes sense. So I know we're about to wrap up, and I just wondered if I'll go to my last little thing. Sorry, I had lots of little slides for you depending on what came up. There's a practice here that you can do to help you with your self-respect building, and we will send that to you by email. But I also wondered if there was just any questions about anything we talked about today, and sort of, the link, the biggest link I hope you take away is that self-respect is easier to nurture than caring what people think about us or the opinion of ourselves. And that part of resiliency is nurturing our self-respect, which is, just whatever you can do in your daily practices to show you that that you matter. And then that will come out in your output in the world, as far as how you're treating others. And how we treat others, we have to work with other people to get things done and make the world more sustainable and better, and to help educate all of our students. That's how that all hangs together in our kind of theory of change here at the Respect Institute. So I hope you find some of this helpful. And would love to see if you have any questions before we have to bump off. Carrie, yes. We're going through a national stress overload and a national and international trauma. And that's exactly right. Like, I feel like there are no easy fixes, but I feel like if we don't acknowledge, and I think the real burnout period is actually happening right now. Yes, we're getting vaccines. My kid's finally getting vaccinated today, right? We're getting back to seeing people and breaking the isolation. But now I feel like the burnout's really going to set in. Just remember, it's that emotional exhaustion from giving too much. It's that I feel like things are kind of futile. And I think one of the things we need to do as institutions, or even communities of peers, like those of you who are colleagues, is acknowledge this and think about how can we change our environment a little bit. So do deal a tiny bit with the stressors to help people somehow recharge. Any other questions or comments? Oh, great. Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, and showing and telling appreciation, I really feel like this is a really good lever, because, remember, our self-respect does need to be alluded to around us and in our relationships. And so, giving words of appreciation and of true acknowledgement, just noticing how hard someone's working or how hard they're trying. If it helps you remember even just the basics of you get more flies with honey, right? It's true. Like I was becoming very ornery for about 6 months. I felt like I was just really definitely not walking the talk of this stuff. And I just made myself start going back to me, which is I like to acknowledge and encourage. I like to give my little gifts. And I just sort of made myself at first just start doing that stuff again. And then I started to get back on the bike of that's how I treat other people. And then of course the relationships got better and the work got better. Oh yeah, sleep, walking outdoors. Walking outdoors is one of the greatest also trauma healing activities. Literally. And if you could ever do it barefoot, not to be your California hippie friend again, but if you can ever even just like walk in your backyard barefoot, like the whole grounding is very important. Yeah, Maria, I'm like that too. I think, just being able to take one right action, one action in a direction versus we know that anxiety increases when we don't actually move, whether that's physically or move to action. And so that is a great way in the moment to kind of keep it moving versus playing scary movies in our head, right? And yeah, I love trying to keep that mindset too, that people are doing the best they can. And I want to give you all grace that if you feel like people are not doing the best they can and they're being awful and doing it wrong, just know that's a sign of burnout because we know that that's not who you really are and that's not your set point. So just notice that like, I must be really burned out because I think everybody is just being awful and not doing their best. I do notice that when I start, my little complaint file starts to get really full in my head, that it's time to do a few of the practices that I need to do now. I recognize to move the stress through my body. And for me, that is walking, water, sometimes not talking to a friend or a therapist because I feel like I can wind myself back up again because I'm very feisty. So for me, it has to be the more quiet processing, like the more quiet, just move it through. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel sad. What's happening. Faye, are we at a wrap? I didn't want to delay you to your next session, y'all. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. And thank you for giving me grace that I am doing this from Zoom and I'm a little rusty. But I really appreciate all the work you're doing at Dallas College, and we'll be sending you some resources and hope to stay connected to you and support the wonderful work you're doing on the ground for thousands and thousands. So thank you for that.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, Courtney.